I'm Davy. I'm awesome. And welcome to Davy's Awesome Wrestling, where I review wrestling and things, all from the perspective of a fan, not an insider. So this week, I am reviewing a new documentary, came out recently exclusively for Peacock. American Nightmare, Becoming Cody Rhodes. Narrated by Stephen Amell. The documentary starts out with the fact that Cody Rhodes is a second-generation talent, the son of the legendary Dusty Rhodes, which definitely were big shoes for him to fill. It's always rough on somebody who's a generational talent to go in there with expectations already of them. However, I will say this, it's got to be a lot rougher on them when their dad is somebody like Dusty Rhodes. Like, not saying nothing against the Rotundo brothers, but I definitely think it's probably a lot easier being the son of IRS versus the son of Dusty Rhodes or Ric Flair or somebody to that caliber. But it starts off with his mother, Michelle Rubio, and his sister, Teal Gurgle, and him growing up in Marietta, Georgia, and growing up with his father, Dusty Rhodes, who at that point was pretty much done with his in-ring career, was able to focus more on being with his family. And it goes into how, as much as Dusty Rhodes achieved in his career, one thing he never did achieve was becoming the WWE champion. He came very close. They even have a picture of him holding up the WWF championship, but he didn't win it that night. He won the match against the champion by countout, but titles don't exchange hands. That was the closest he ever got to being the WWE champion. He did later wrestle exclusively for WWF, but he was in that time frame where everything was always centered around Hulk Hogan, so who knows? If they hadn't been doing that, maybe he would have been champion. But back to Cody Rhodes, it goes into when he was a kid and he started doing high school wrestling. At first, not very good at it, needed to build up some strength, but then once he got rolling, got good at it, he went on to twice be state champion. But how even then, doing amateur wrestling in high school of all things, people knowing his dad is Dusty Rhodes and getting compared to Dusty Rhodes, which is kind of weird. But I guess I understand it. I guess if Michael Jordan's kids were playing high school basketball, people would be messing with him about that. I don't know. I wouldn't. That just seems kind of dumb in my opinion. But then from there, high school is over. Of course, he's being offered scholarships, but he doesn't want them. He doesn't want to go to college. Which I understand, it isn't for everybody. Instead, to hone his skills, he goes to Hollywood and pursues acting. And it didn't work out because that's just really not what he wanted. What he wanted was to be a wrestler. Which again, is understandable. Acting, wrestling, any kind of form of entertainment. If you don't really want it, you're probably not going to make it. So he goes back home to Georgia, talks to his father about getting into wrestling. And that is one thing that generational talents will make clear. Their parents can help them get their foot in the door a lot easier than the average person. It doesn't always guarantee they're going to get a contract, even with developmental. Like if you saw Holy Foley, it didn't work out for Noel Foley. But in his case, it did work out. He got into OVW. But not being in OVW very long, along with his brother Dustin, who's a generation older than him, inducted their father Dusty Rhodes into the WWE Hall of Fame. He gave a speech, and it was so good, apparently, that they brought him up to the main stage before he was even ready. And where he just kind of floundered as little rookie Cody Rhodes till he got taken into Legacy. This is one little gripe I have about this documentary. They kind of brushed over his time in Legacy, like very quickly, even though that was his first real big break in WWE. Like before that, he was just a little rookie guy, wasn't all that impressive, started tagging with DiBiase. That was a little bit more impressive. Then they formed Legacy with Randy Orton, and that was the top faction for a time. But again, in this documentary, they just kind of brush over it. Talks about how much he liked Randy Orton, how instrumental Randy was in his career, but again, they just really quickly brushed over it. And went right into after Legacy, when he became Dashing Cody Rhodes. Which was such a stupid gimmick that he made work. And then Dashing Cody Rhodes turns into the Dysmorphia Cody Rhodes, where he had had his nose broken and was convinced that he was now ugly, even though he looked exactly the same, wearing a nose protector, putting paper bags over fans' heads, which again was such a stupid gimmick. But it worked. And in between there, meeting and marrying Brandy Rhodes, his wife, and mother of his child. And leading to one of the best times of his life, getting to tag with his much older brother Dustin to become tag team champions in the Brothers Rhodes. Thankfully, they did skip over that little phase of Team Rhodes Scholars, because that was kind of dumb. But they couldn't skip over him becoming Stardust. And tagging with Goldust, at first being Golden Stardust. It was like a knockoff of Gold Dust. And it was really stupid. But he made it work, which is one reason that later when Cody Rhodes left over frustration with Stardust, I got it. Stardust had gone as far as it was going to go. But I couldn't help but agree with him when he first left. The WWE had made a huge mistake. Whereas he asked for his release, they just let him go, not realizing what they had. They had a guy who was given 3 ridiculously terrible gimmicks, and each one of them worked. He made 3 of the dumbest gimmicks work. Even back then, I was like, are you guys dumb? Imagine what he could do if you really gave him something he could sink his teeth into. Then the documentary takes a completely different tone and gets very sad when they start talking about the passing of his father. It was in 2015, Dusty Rhodes died, and for obvious reasons, his dad, very hard on him. His dad was his hero. It just gets really somber at this point. But another reason you should check out this documentary if you wanted more in-depth into what exactly caused the passing of Dusty Rhodes, it's in this documentary. And then not very long after his father passed, his career's floundering. Creative has no ideas what to do outside of him being Stardust, which he doesn't want to do anymore. He was depressed doing it. He hated it. So he asked for his release. And because they had no plans for him, which again just shows you how ridiculous they can be, he leaves. Goes into the indies. And a lot of people in this documentary, like Hulk Hogan, praised him for that because they say that's what the business is all about, is you betting on yourself, which he did. And it worked out because he became one of, if not the biggest star on the indies. He was all over the place, wrestling everywhere. They didn't talk about it in this documentary, but at one point I remember seeing an interview with Cody Rhodes and talking about just because of how much he's working on the indies, he's making more money than when he was in WWE. Because he was everywhere. He was in all the biggest indie leagues like Ring of Honor and Impact and Northeast Wrestling and Evolve. Overseas, he wrestled in New Japan. He wrestled for WXW. He was everywhere because that was one of the things he worked out for himself. He would not sign deals with any of them to be exclusive to just them. Basically, he created the Forbidden Door. Something that before him never really happened. If somebody was signed to Ring of Honor, they might wrestle for much smaller independents, but they did not wrestle for places like Impact or MLW. The only way a wrestler signed a place like Ring of Honor or Impact could wrestle for a place like New Japan is if that company had a working arrangement with New Japan Pro Wrestling. He could just go wherever he wanted. And while in New Japan is when he came up with the character of the American Nightmare. Kind of a play off of his dad's name, the American Dream, but also creating his own character, something to distinguish him from his father. Even though at some point around there he felt he'd earned the right to start bleaching his hair blonde like his dad did. I remember when he first did that, I wasn't a big fan of it. Not because I care what their hair looks like, but for that very reason. I'm like, you're supposed to be separating yourself from your dad. You're kind of reminding us of your dad. But it worked out because at that point he was right. He had distinguished himself enough as his own guy that he could go ahead and do little homages to his dad. And from there, it kind of told the story of All In about him and Nick and Matt Jackson, which they did mention by name, surprisingly, doing a pay-per-view with nothing but indie wrestlers. Didn't really go into the why. As we know, the why is because Dave Meltzer had said that no one outside of WWE could ever fill a 10,000-seat arena, and they said challenge accepted, and they surpassed 10,000. And they did mention how All In was the catalyst to create All Elite Wrestling, but of course it is a WWE documentary. He is now a WWE contracted wrestler, so they didn't talk too much about AEW. I understand that, but of course it is a WWE documentary. Triple H is a part of it, so at some point he had to take a cheap shot at AEW. But, like I said, they just kind of glossed over his time in AEW until he had made himself such a name that his AEW contract was coming up, and WWE wanted him back bad. So bad that Vince McMahon personally flew to his house in Georgia, which Vince McMahon does not normally do. And Cody Rhodes, to dispel rumors, did say that he left for personal reasons that he would not go into, but it had nothing to do with pay, and it had nothing to do with any of the talent there. I think that one was always a weird argument because it was always pretty clear. His intention when leaving WWE was to show WWE why they want him and why they need to do more with him. And it worked. But it looked like his intention was always to go back to WWE, which he did talk about. His dream is achieving the one thing his father could not, which is being WWE champion. And they go into his return at WrestleMania 38, which I will say the miraculous thing for me there was at that point, of course I knew he was going back to WWE. It was obvious. I didn't expect that they would actually let him continue being the American Nightmare character. I was surprised that they let him keep his entrance music, his whole persona, his name. They don't like doing that, but they did, because it was just too good. And it goes into the Hell in the Cell pay-per-view, where he was to have a Hell in the Cell match with Seth Rollins, but literally a few days before, while working out, bench pressing, tore his pectoral muscle. And whereas everybody was telling him don't do it, he was refusing to not get in that ring. Which I understand. It would have been very disappointing to come up with a last-minute filler that soon. But that's what most people, I think, would have done. Because nobody saw that pay-per-view and did not cringe the moment he took his jacket off and unveiled that disgusting bruise on his chest. And we also just kept cringing throughout the entire match because everything he did made us go, God, that's gotta hurt. But he did get through the match, showed he had balls, but had to take time off with his injury. Coming back at the Royal Rumble, winning the Royal Rumble, getting to go on to WrestleMania 39, to be in the main event, to challenge, to be the undisputed WWE Universal Champion. And lost. That's kind of where the documentary ends, and that would be my biggest gripe about this documentary, is that it's basically reminding us of what happened in real life. All of this going on, leading up to this fantastic ending, but we didn't get it. We got that crappy ending at WrestleMania 39. Now, I know the story's not finished. They're probably going to keep it going until WrestleMania 40, and who knows, maybe there, Cody Rhodes will finally win the championship. Because I will say at this point, if anybody but Cody Rhodes is the one to unseat Roman Reigns, that's going to suck, but ultimately it sucks now because it should have happened months ago. It won't be as big a deal to me if they do it at WrestleMania 40, because it should have already happened. However, the documentary is good. It's just as a wrestling fan, it kind of just reminds me of how I felt at WrestleMania 39. Watching, waiting, wanting that strong finish, but not getting it. So that's how I feel about the documentary. It's good if you're a wrestling fan. It's okay. It's nice to get a little insight, but it's a terrible, terrible ending. So if you can handle that, the fact that you're going to get the same ending that you've been living with for the last year, then go ahead and check out American Nightmare, Becoming Cody Rhodes on Peacock. So there you have it. That's my wrestling review this week. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you did, make sure to hit like, hit subscribe, hit the little bell so you get notifications when I post new videos, and leave a comment. Tell me what you thought of American Nightmare, Becoming Cody Rhodes. Love you guys.